So let me ask then, considering that in many countries, women regularly do take part in this Quran recitation, are you connecting with them in some sort of even deeper correspondence and making those connections? And tell me about Bosnia. That's where I'm getting at, about the deeper connections. As a Bosniak, I'm very proud, and I'm especially touched and happy to hear about your connection and beautiful experiences that you've had recently in Bosnia. And I wish you could tell us a little bit more about how it started, how it ensued, and then beyond Bosnia as well. Are you connecting? You read some beautiful testimonies of women sharing their views about it, but tell us more about this world network that's being created thanks to technology and your dignified resilience.
Well, I think I'm really glad that you looked into this issue of the recitation being a sort of form of healing, because actually the Qur'an, people listen to it a lot for purposes of healing, and to exclude women from that research is actually, like, you know, it's so good that you highlighted that, because that is really problematic that that research hasn't, you know, covered that area yet. So I'm really, really glad that you're shedding awareness on this point, and I hope in the future this will encourage more people to actually include women like Maria in them and using them, and that's so, yeah, I thought that was so interesting to learn about your discovery with that. And yeah, because we know that the Quran, like, has so many healing benefits, and yeah, so I just wanted to comment that.
Yeah, I'm also surprised and happy that I've discovered it too, so yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So as part of the female reciters movement, and whenever I travel, I always love to discover female reciters. So if I find someone who has recited Quran as a woman, I will just always try to, like, get in touch with them, and because the thing is, here in Scotland, I'm like the only person that recites Quran in public, so I'm an anomaly here. However, in other places in the world, it's so normal, and connecting with those women is such a blessing. And actually, the Quran has been such a blessing for me, in that it's connected me with so many, like, beautiful-hearted and good people, and I am so grateful for that. So the way that I've been connecting with people is so the first time that I went to Bosnia. So for example, the first time I went to Bosnia with my family, one of the girls who followed me on Instagram, one of my friends, Lamia, she said, so I met with her and we recited Quran together in front of the Begma Mosque, and it was just so lovely to hear her reciting and to recite together and to be there together. And it was the Quran that brought us together through, like, the online movement. And yeah, so I was, and since then we're, like, still such good friends, and it was really, really special that it connects me in that way. And so online, whenever I find, like, women, so one day I came across on SoundCloud a recording of Sakina Hassan, a recording from 1933, and she was one of the Egyptian reciters. And the first time I heard it, I was just so, like, moved and so touched, and you can really feel, I really, really felt the beauty of her recitation. It's really hard to explain, but you can really feel the beauty of it, and it brings such a sense of peace, and it's really moving to hear that. And also, even, like, Kulthum, she's one of, like, the most famous women, well-known singers, and she started off actually by reciting Quran, because her father was a reciter, so that's how she developed such a great pronunciation of Arabic from her singing, and that people always say it's because she was a Quran reciter. And I found some short recordings of her reciting Quran. There's not many, but even just to listen to them, they're so, so beautiful. And it's interesting that actually I heard that she had to, like, dress up as a boy, like, when she was having to do, like, her singing and things. So it just kind of, like, also highlights, you know, the position of women, and she had to do that. So I've been to Bosnia quite a few times. I went there for summer school with CNS, and through that I managed to meet so many different people from across Europe. So it was a summer school bringing together young Muslims from across Europe. And yeah, so when we were traveling on the bus, we were on like a long bus journey, just going from different locations. And as we do as young people, we like to sing and things like that on these long journeys. And the Bosnians were sharing their like ilahis and their really beautiful traditional songs. And also the girls wanted me to share like a recitation of Qur'an as well, like on the journey. So I went to the front of the bus. I used like a little microphone, and I asked, "What do you want me to recite?" And then I just recited something, and because it's something so sacred and so beautiful. But when I discussed it with the organisers, it was so interesting, because one of the organisers said to me that actually his wife Shahida Jahanovic Alic, I hope I have remembered her name correctly, that his wife, she recites Quran quite often, and later on, a year or so later, I heard a recitation of hers, and it was so beautiful and powerful. And that was my first introduction to the fact that in Bosnia women recite Quran, because I didn't know much about Bosnia. I didn't know that women in Europe right there were reciting Quran. And so also when I was in Bosnia, like visiting for the first time the beg of a mosque, it was really interesting because I noticed there were women at the front of the mosque, young girls, and yeah, I think she had finished memorizing the Quran, and she was there at the front of the mosque, and I had never seen anything like that before, and I was just wondering what is going on here. So there's these girls at the front of the mosque, and they were, reciting Quran, and I was just, this is so like eye-opening for me. And this was also the beginning of my journey there. And later on, when I visited Bosnia again in Ramadan, because I made some really good friends in Bosnia who I have really connected with, and we became really close friends. Everyone was always saying to me, come to Bosnia in Ramadan, it's so special, it's so like wonderful. And of course, living here in Scotland, I don't feel the Ramadan feeling is a little bit different. So because it's something we just kind of celebrate within like our own family, and there's not such like a wider celebration of Ramadan, if that's the right word. And so I wanted to experience something new. So my friend, so I stayed with a Bosnian family, one of my close friends, and when I was there, I wanted to volunteer, to help and to teach, because I've grown up in this environment where like my parents have shown me that it's important to use your time to serve others and to volunteer and to teach. So it's always natural for me to want to teach the Quran and to help young people. So I just reached out to as many organizations in Bosnia as possible and said, I'm coming here, I want to use my time wisely, I want to give something back to the community there, to do something positive, to help people. And there was an organization called Nahla, and I worked there I volunteered there and did some talks for the young people on human rights and different sort of issues. And then also in Ramadan, it was really, really special because all these opportunities just kept coming my way, like so spontaneously. It wasn't even like really planned. So people would just say, oh, can you come to our iftar? Can you come here and recite for us? One example is, so in Bosnia, they have the mukabelas, the Quran gatherings, and I didn't know about this. I didn't know that in Ramadan, people would do this, because living in a non-Muslim country, I think, again, we just do most of our worship quite privately and like not as a community as such, apart from the Tarawih prayers. But in Bosnia, I realized that there was a women's mosque, and I contacted the lady and I said, I really want to come, I really want to experience this, I really want to be there. And she was so kind, and she said, so I've visited, and she said, actually, so apparently like this mosque, they only have hafidas of Quran. I'm not a hafid, I haven't memorized the Quran. So all the women who recite there have memorized the Quran, and that's like some sort of requirement for joining this mukabela. But they said to me, you're our guest, we want you to recite for us. So actually, like after they made a way to make me be able to, so they found a way to include me, and that was really, really touching and really special for me. And when I was sitting there alongside a number of different women, and I was like last to recite, and I had heard all of these women before me recite, I just can't explain how it felt. I had never experienced this before, and to listen to them, and each person has their own voice and their own like touch to it. So it's nice to listen to different women reciters as well. All of them were so beautiful and so special. And when I just remember when I was reciting, like it was so lovely, because it just this lovely sense of community, and I didn't feel like I was an anomaly, like the only reciter. I felt like I was with these other women who are using their voices to recite, and they're connecting with God. And I remember one day I tried to make an effort to go to the Muqabala, and one day I was running late, so I was quickly coming on my way, and as I was walking across the bridge, I could see the minaret of the mosque in the distance, and I heard a woman's voice emanating from the minaret, and I heard her voice reciting Qur'an, and I knew it was a woman because I knew the woman who was reciting, and I was familiar with her voice. And it was just I'm like, oh, I have to quickly record this, because I've never imagined in my life I would hear a woman's voice reciting Qur'an from a mosque. And yeah, I remember later I shared this video online, and a lot of people were just, oh, this can't be a woman, this is definitely a man. And it just shows like people are,
I heard it. It was clearly a woman.
Yeah. It was definitely a woman, and people are like, nope, it was not a woman, like it must be. But it just shows people are really, they can't even imagine that it could be a woman. That's why they probably think, oh, it's just.
Were you, while you were in Sarajevo, at any point in a mixed environment where men and women were doing it together?
Actually, in that mosque, it was interesting. So there were women, but then also like at the side there was one man there, and maybe he was just like, I don't know what his purpose was for being there. Maybe he was like from like the Islamic community or something. But so it was kind of a mixed gathering, and also the fact that the recitation was being like emanating across the community, you could hear it. So it was in public, even though this specific Muqabala was just for women to recite. So on Laylatul Qadr, it was really lovely. There is a really beautiful, there's so many beautiful people there, and some people in the community reached out to me and they said, please come and visit our mosque. I think this mosque was in, I don't want to say the name in case I pronounce it wrongly, but there was one mosque there I was invited to on Laylatul Qadr. It was quite a family mosque, and it was so special because they wanted me to recite Qur'an with them, and there was a lot of young people there, a lot of young children. And
was it again just women?
No, this was a mixed gathering. So there was men and women. They had just finished the Tarawih prayers, and then I came and they asked me to come and sit at the front, like right next to the Imam. Like, and I was like, okay, really? Like, this is so, like, I'd never been asked to like sit right at the front of the mosque. And the Imam was there, and also his wife was there. She was also very active, and she does a lot of Qur'an and singing and things too. So it started off with the Imam gave a talk, and I had never like spoken to them much about myself or who I was, and for some reason, like, and I was so surprised afterwards when my friends translated it to me, like after when they saw the video, and they said that they said that he introduced me so nicely, and that and my family, and I was so touched that they went to the effort to like make such a nice introduction to make me feel appreciated and welcome, and it shows their hospitality and their kindness. And I remember like afterwards when I thanked them for inviting me and for allowing me to recite with them, they said to me, like, you're always welcome here, you're not just our guest, you are part of our community, you're welcome here, you're like, you know, and that was so touching to feel that sense of belonging, and that sense of not being shunned, but actually being welcomed and acknowledged and appreciated, and not discriminated because I was a woman. And also in that gathering, the young people did their songs, and it was really lovely. So you had the men all on one side, and then all the women on the other side. So it was quite a natural gathering. There wasn't any like, it was so dignified, it was so composed, and everyone kind of just had everything just fitted so nicely. So that was,
I mean,
such a special.
Look at me glowing because I'm Bosniak and I'm listening to this with such excitement and like happiness to hear this.
And then my friend's sister, Maliha, she contacted me and she said, Medina, like my friend Zainab's going to be reciting in a small mosque in her neighborhood and she really wants to connect with you and meet you. Would you like to come? And of course, like I was delighted. I really wanted to listen to, I love to listen to more women reciting Quran. So I went there to the Maghribiya Jamia, and there were young girls in the mosque and there were also young boys too just opposite them, and then the imam was in the middle, and so the young boys recited Quran first and then passed the microphone to the girls, and then the girls recited together, and it was so beautiful to be there. And it's a very small mosque, and there was elders in the mosque too, so that was a really lovely experience. Again, something the first time I'd seen young people reciting together. So that was in Ramadan as part of the Mukabala. Like in Ramadan, when I would walk, I think it might have been after Ramadan, when I would walk home, it was in Bielave. There was a small mosque there, and I would just always see, and I couldn't see inside it because it's kind of closed off. And one day I was walking by it with my friend Iman, and it was like kind of around Maghrib time, so I was thinking maybe it would be open. And then literally as soon as I opened the door, I met the same Imam that I met on the first charity iftar. It was such a coincidence, and they had finished Maghrib, and he was about to lock up the mosque, and he welcomed me in, and he literally passed me the microphone and said, "Oh, you can recite some Quran here, and you're welcome to practice and recite Quran here." And it was really lovely because in this mosque, as soon as we entered, it was like a secret garden, and there was like a beautiful rose garden they had created, and it's such a peaceful sanctuary. It's a really small mosque. It's called the Qasim Katibova Jamia, and I probably pronounced that so wrong, so I'm sorry, but it's really lovely, and yeah, I really appreciated that.
That's beautiful.
And
so many great experiences from Bosnia.
I have two more stories. Yeah. I could like literally talk about Bosnia like for so long. Anytime I meet somebody, then I tell them about Bosnia, and then my family think that I'm like obsessed with Bosnia. So you know the Begava Mosque. One day I was just sitting there in the courtyard with my friend Adina, and we were reciting them together, Surah Al-Kahf, and I remember we actually went inside the mosque, and just because there was no one else there, and we recited together, and we went to the front of the mosque too, and then the janitor came in and he told us that he saw us on the cameras like in the front of the mosque, and luckily the janitor remembered me from the day before, and the day before I had been sitting in the courtyard of Begava, and it happened that his grandson, like his little toddler, was playing there, and I was like, you know, I was playing with his young grandson too. So he remembered me from there, and he's like, "Oh, it's okay. You can stay here, and you can finish reciting Quran. I'll let you stay." And yeah, so he didn't remove us from the mosque. And then it was really interesting because as me and Adina were reciting Quran together, a Hafiz came into Begava Mosque, and he just sat in a corner, and there was a girl there with him. And she was reciting her memorization, and he was examining her and checking it. And so they were just in the corner doing that while me and Adina were reciting. And it was so nice. And then afterwards, I spoke to him with Adina. He couldn't speak English very well, so she translated. And and he gave us a Quran lesson, and he recited the adhan for me. I asked him if I wanted to hear it, and he gave us advice and invited us to his mosque. So his mosque was the Bistrik Jamia, and it was really lovely that he spent time with us and gave us advice on the Quran. And one thing that stuck with me is he told us, like, every day just always remember to be grateful for the Quran, and always like say alhamdulillah for it. And yeah, that was just one really lovely experience that I wanted to share as well. Just all these events that happened were so spontaneous, and that's also kind of made me feel lost for words. Another day I was walking in Bosnia on the streets, and it suddenly started raining so much, and I didn't have an umbrella, so I was just standing there, and then this Bosnian lady like came out of her house, and she like gave me her umbrella to walk home with, and the only Bosnian words that I knew were like "volim te." Oh. I love you. And then that's it. So yeah, so I always had such a beautiful experience there. And then even though I wasn't able to go this year, the community there did an online mukabala on, and they asked me to recite with them too. So they still kept in touch, and it was nice to do that with them too. So that was really special.
I'm so happy to hear this. Our listeners should forgive us for going too long about these examples. I'm
You
personally,
can cut it out if it's too long. I don't mind.
I mean, I'm personally biased, but also proud of those wonderful parts of tradition, of local Muslim tradition in Bosnia. And I do want it to be heard on this episode precisely because it is lived experience, and you have been to different places. And this is not to prove like somebody. I don't want anybody to misunderstand this and say, oh, this is better, or they're doing this, or no. This is how it is done in life, in lived experience, in this place. And it could be an example, hopefully, and an inspiration to those listeners who might hear this from other parts of the world. And we Bosniaks are proud of our Muslim heritage. We are Muslim. We have been killed for being Muslim, and I'm saying this because oftentimes Bosniaks are perceived as in some Muslims' eyes as not Muslim enough, whereas for the Christians or the Europeans, we're not European enough. So that's why I'm always proud and cite and want to share this. So forgive us for going too long. It's positive.
Sorry.
But
But there was, although I mean, no place is perfect. Like for me, it was a bit strange that the women didn't pray Eid prayer, and I heard that in Austria the Bosnians there do pray. So I think
yeah,
it's like,
it's
you know, no
different.
place.
Yeah.
It's just different. Like here, it would be normal for me to pray Eid prayer, but there it wasn't. So I think different places we have different like ways of expressing their faith.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Absolutely. And I did want to just add and explain a little bit precisely about this mukabela part that Medina was talking about. I mean, the Gazi Husarveg Library in Sarajevo has prepared an online exhibition entitled Mukabela and the Manuscript Juices of the Qur'an. And I was so happy to find it while researching and preparing for this episode, and it's still available, although only in English. So I translated some parts for you, but you can see the photos. And this exhibition aims to present a beautiful and multifaceted tradition of teaching Mukabela as an expression of respect for the Word of God, which has been and is expressed in our area, geographical area, in various ways. But in the first part of the exhibition, through documents, photographs, inscriptions from periodicals and monographs, you can learn about this tradition of learning Mukabela, which is deeply present and rooted in the mosques throughout Bosnia and Herzegovina. We can learn that between 1903 and 1907, there have been Hafiz, like Hafiz Yusuf Efendia Grozdanovic, who was teaching 3 girls to become Hafiza at the time. So this is the beginning of 20th century. 2 of the girls finally finished, but in those years of teaching them, it is stated that this Hafiz Yusuf also taught and recited Ramadan Mukabela together with his students, with his female students, to women in a mosque in Sarajevo. Now those got forgotten, but we have them now at the beginning of 20th century in terms of both this idea of transmitting the knowledge about the Quran to women, to young girls, who then kept transmitting it on. And then we see, and I think Medina, from your friends, you also learned similar thing, that in 1953, actually, as per request of Hafiza Fatima Zulfikar Porcho, a woman's mukabela was started in Hadžiska Mosque in Sarajevo after the noon prayer. And of course, with a pause from 92 to 95 during the aggression on Bosnia and Herzegovina, this mukabela stopped, but is still happening today. And I mean, long story short, it's a beautiful exhibition. I encourage all of you to see, because it's actually showing the photos of these very old Bosniak women who are female reciters, like Aisha Pekmezovic, who became a Hafiza when she was 12 years old. And from then on, until 1976, she was freely, as a volunteer, reciting the Mukabela, and helped many, many women in Bosnia learn the Quran themselves. So many other inspiring, Bosniak women who were reciting this Quran for so long, memorizing it and transmitting it. So this tradition is, is there, and it's been passing throughout the generation. And another thing, Medina, that you might also appreciate, but I think our listeners as well, there is a beautiful, before I forget, for those who are interested, a beautiful, wonderful documentary available online freely in English and Bosnian, which is called Bosnian Muslim Women's Rituals, Bulas.
Oh, I've seen it. Yeah.
Beautiful singing, reciting, and teaching in Sarajevo, which is an educational film by Professor Katarina Raudvere from Copenhagen and Dr. Zilka Spahic-Shilak from Sarajevo. And why I so appreciated this documentary as well is because it's explaining a different tradition that's very, present in Bosnia. This documentary is a non-commercial product. It's intended for university classes and to document women in charge of Muslim praying traditions in Bosnia and to give a glimpse of the historical roots of these practices. So it's really beautiful. It's describing Mevlud and Tevhid. These are the rituals which are kind of present in our geographical regions, both including the repetition of Allah's names, zikr, intense prayers, Qur'an recitation, and the singing of songs, which are part of these rituals. And again, why this is beautiful but also important, and is that these young bulas learn through participating, as it is said in the description of the documentary, when they receive these ritual assignments from more experienced bulas. So in this way, this tradition is not only being preserved, but it's also being now, thanks to this documentary, we see as a testimony of how long it has been present in our region. So Medina has seen it, but I will definitely include the link of it.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Have you seen it? Yeah.
Yeah, I saw it a long time ago. It's nice because you see them in different ways, singing and reciting and like different contexts. So it was a really beautiful film. I really enjoyed it. It was really touching.
Absolutely. So I recommend everybody to see it as well, and I will add a link to it. So Medina, now let's go back to something that is very important. And again, we talked about this a little bit before recording this, and that is the support of men in this conversation. I don't want to use battle because I always want to believe that this is not just or men versus women. I think we're all talking about a literalist interpretation that both men and women can do. We've seen in the first part of the podcast how you've encountered some bad reactions from some Muslim women as well. So I always want to cite and add, yes, what male privilege and the formation of knowledge and who made the knowledge led to, but also I always want to acknowledge and talk about today male scholars who champion the cause for more human rights for Muslim women, and also just ordinary men, fathers, husbands, brothers, uncles, grandfathers around the world in Muslim families who really support Muslim women to go forward towards their spiritual fulfillment or professional fulfillment or whatnot. That said, somebody comes to my mind, and that is your dad, your own father. So please tell us about him in a sense of, you mentioned him a little bit. Of course, he obviously founded a center. We see how lovingly and dedicated he is to his own community. But tell us a little bit about your dad's support. He's even helping you find some old recordings, right?
Yeah, so I thought one day, like, maybe if we searched in Arabic, then maybe we'd find more examples of women reciters. So my dad knows Arabic because he studied it. So yeah, he searched up online and he found some really old recordings from Egypt of Egyptian women who were on the radio. And the earliest one that we found was from 1905, and it was incredible to listen to it. And he's like, Medina, add this to the female reciters tag, put it online, share it. So yeah, and then I shared it just to make it more noticeable and to raise more awareness. And people really loved to hear the old recordings because it shows that it's really not something new, and it shows that it's just a really special connection to our legacy, and it's quite special. So My dad's always been giving me like opportunities and supporting me. So in the community center, he'd be like, "Oh, Madinah, today like you can just do a recitation," like just so randomly, like, and I would just go and do it. Or even the first recitation that I did in the cathedral, one of the first public ones. My dad was actually invited to do that recitation, but he just said, "Okay, Medina, you can do it. Like, just you know, you can go ahead and do it," because he knows that women's voices aren't heard as much. So he gave me the space and the opportunity to do that, which I think is really important, because in order to make changes, we have to come together, and not just women, but also men and women together and supporting one another. And even if we look at the example of Maria Ulfa, who is a really famous reciter in Indonesia, many men actually say that her voice has been a model for them and an exemplar for both women and men. So that's actually really interesting. And then also we have, you see, Kulthum, her father was a Qur'an reciter, and that's how she kind of learned and got into reciting as well. So yes, it's something really, really important to have that family support. And I guess knowing that I have support within my family means that it's easier for me to deal with other people, like if they're like criticizing me or, you know, giving me negative feedback, then at least I know, like, then I am quite supported. So it's quite good, because I know like other people don't have that support and it's a lot harder for them. So I'm really grateful.
Support online from Muslim men. I mean, I've seen some, I've seen some comments to your tweets that come from Muslim men, or who were bewildered when I saw the tweets where you shared the azan from Sarajevo, or when you do something in there, and some of them share actually the articles that are written and available online about how this was the tradition in the past and how it's now gone. So they're there, but they're there. So how vocal are they from your experience, considering that you are out there and doing this on a daily basis with your public appearances, etc.?
In my community, the Muslim community is quite silent, and they, you know, they just don't really say much. I guess there are people that will give me support and will say things here and there, but overall people just try to stay silent, because they don't really, I don't think people have the courage to say something, or maybe they just don't know much about it because they think it's wrong or something like that. But I think online there certainly has been a lot of men that have supported me too, so I can't like say that there isn't, but I think the proportion is a lot different between women and men. And also I think I don't want them to support me as a person, but actually to support like the movement and the women's movement of all women's voices. So I think it's just, I think there are people there, but I think we all can do more in our communities, and the real change happens within grassroots communities. So a video online might get like loads of views, but I don't know what impact that's actually going to have within communities. And I think it's good because it will raise awareness and it will make people think and question and research. But I think the real change is going to have to be in communities, and that's where men and women have to work together.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've talked quite a bit in this podcast, and I think that what I was trying to convey and what I think we got to kind of conclude together is that, long story short, all of this is related. I mean, it's a mix related to theological issues of gender, but then religious interpretations that end up excluding Muslim women. Then we have some impacts of localized practices and tradition, then lack of knowledge, internalized interpretation, etc. And the list is long in terms of, we spoke about this outside of Islam as a religion per se as well. It's a big conversation on sexuality and women's rights. But also, I think that what I wanted to convey a little bit is lived realities, whether it's how women are just being excluded, how they're not being allowed to reach more spiritual fulfillment, how their healing is potentially better healing in certain circumstances is impeached or hindered because of these unjust interpretations and claims. So, and our today's topic in terms of Quran female reciters is just one manifestation of it. We see it, and I tried in several of my podcasts, and I will continue doing that, to just shed the light on many different ways that we do injustice to we Muslims, inside to each other. exclusion in mosques is another example, and there's Hind Makki from, who made Side Entrance Initiative that raises awareness of women's marginalization in mosques around the world and actually inspires women to demand specific tangible changes. And I really appreciate her for doing that as well. So Madinah, and from all these different initiatives, I do want to mention how there is this beautiful sisterhood that's emerging that I really like and appreciate as well, or that could even become stronger in terms of bond when we listen to each other, when we learn from each other, and when I try to be inclusive as well, inclusive of men, even while of men who support us today, even when they kept excluding us for all sorts of reasons that we talked about in the past hour or so. And what I want to say is that I've been happy to witness it online, while just even the sisterhood, while even just scrolling through the hashtag of yours and all the creative posts and recitations too. And you've told us about some of the observations that some women from around the world keep sharing with you. So, and let's not forget that even reading about reciters in Indonesia, modeling their recitations after a handful of Egyptian reciters, or vice versa, somebody listening to Bosnian recitation and then, thinking about their own. This is beautiful. Now we have technology. Now it's being recorded, disseminated, broadcasted throughout the world. And I'm happy. I'm happy because I'm optimistic about this, because there is this beautiful sharing and cooperation that's dynamic and that's going on thanks to people like you, thanks to technology. And I do want, considering that we're going towards the end, I do also hope that this podcast contributes more to the visibility of all these reciters and our demands for this to become something that is not and should not be seen as a novelty, even though it is for some. And I think that a lot of people from Pakistan to Afghanistan, I read the comments, I see where they are from. They say, oh, I wish we had women reciters, or, oh, I never heard something like that, which you told us as well. So now that we're coming towards the end, Madinah, do you have anything to add in terms of both tell us about your current efforts, about your future plans, and any message at the end?
Oh, you said it so beautifully, your words. It's hard to say anything better.
I know we think the same things, but anything that you might tell us about your future endeavors. I think I saw recently, did you make an online club or some Zoom meeting club? What was that about, or did I misread something?
Yeah, that was, so there was a Qur'an circle in America, but the time zone didn't suit people here. So then I asked if anyone would be interested, and so many people contacted me. It's quite experimental. I don't know what it's going to be, but it just brings people together again to connect. Like even this Ramadan, I was searching for women to listen to share opportunities for people to access more women reciters, and I found like Lamia Alili in Croatia. She was reciting every day in the mosque, and then another lady in Livno in Bosnia, Shayla, and then another lady in Germany. So I tried to like make a list and share those. And I think the most important thing is that we have like people in our communities actively doing things. And I would just say each person has been given like a skill or a passion, and it's just about finding that and then nurturing that and then sharing that with others in your community. And it's only just about giving a little bit of your time and offering that to your community. And I think that is what will make the change if each person just does that. Because even I notice in our community centre, like we have such space for women and the community, but sometimes like I don't see women actually coming and using that. But often I see lots of women kind of complaining about, and rightfully complaining about not having access. But when there is access and people have created these spaces that are there for women, like are we now taking that opportunity and using it? So yeah, I think that's really important, and I'll just add that.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, you've been having more, I think, public appearances recently, and I think there's more visibility. As there's more visibility, there are more people who are getting interested in this topic, and I tried to, expand and offer more information. And as I said earlier on, I discovered a lot while preparing for this episode as well. And I know but I just want to tell our listeners that you continue inspiring many women and men around the world, probably even when they don't want to admit it, with your persistence and commitment. Thank you, Medina, because you're making changes and waves of positive change where you know and where you don't know it. I wanted to acknowledge you in this way as well.
Like, I think we have to remember, like, the Qur'an it's not entertainment, it's not a performance, but it's about creating tranquility and awe. And I think it is scary, like the sayings, like, about people that use Qur'an to show off, and these sayings. So that's why I think it's important that we all keep renewing our intentions, like, over and over and over again, and just remembering that the purpose of reciting the Qur'an is to please Allah and to gain blessings for it. So I think we just have to keep remembering these things, especially like online. If people are posting online and things like that, then we just have to be careful with our intentions and
I'm sure that a lot of people have the best intentions from their own perspectives and worldviews, and that's why I always say I respect your right to do that, but I also then learn. I try to study. I try to understand why they might be saying that. I try to offer a different point of view, both from within my tradition. I try to give explanation of why it is so unjust. I try to offer examples of lived experience from different countries, starting from my own, where not everything is perfect in any sort of way. So, Medina, now finally, well, not finally, because I don't want this to be over, but
we could just talk all day. Like, there's so much we can even talk for like another podcast.
I recommend our listeners to maybe, split it during the weekend, have first part watched during the morning, and then at night you have audio and video as well. And that's the versatility that I try to offer to the listeners and viewers as well, in terms of the medium of how they prefer to listen or watch. So we're coming towards the part which I called 5 sweet questions, where I try to, make the guest even more approachable and human than just a beautiful, scholarly activist, or inspiring them as they are in terms of their work. So you can respond in any way you want. Some people give funny, some people give more serious answers as well. So the first question is, once the current global pandemic is over, God help us. I mean, that topic can be controversial depending on one's worldview. But I want to ask you if there is something from this period that you would specifically not want to forget.
There's one I'd like to share, like a poem that a close friend of mine wrote before she died, and it always stayed with me, and like especially during this time, like I was thinking about it. And her poem described how we're all on a boat through the ocean of this life, journeying through all of the waves that are brought our way, and she prayed that by the grace of God, may we all find our way back home. And I just think it was so beautiful. And right now we're all going through these different waves in our lives, and I think we're all just on that journey, and we just have to keep being kind to ourselves and trying to do good. And I think if there's something that I remember, is I just want to remember that I use my time wisely. And it's quite hard, especially in a pandemic, to be productive sometimes. But I think at the end of the day, just to have good intentions and sincerity. So I think,
yeah. Oh God, it's so good that you reminded all of us. I think especially with the social media and with the Twitter, it's so difficult to understand and convey, but also it's so much more easier to judge people. And I do sometimes, when I'm reminded, try to just put a random tweet about the importance of intention. That can never be, like, people who will want to see good in you will see good in you. People who will want to judge and project projections of what they want you to be will continue doing that no matter what. That's why there's only so much we can do, but in terms of our presence in social media. But I think that accountability, which matters for each person. And always for me, yes, it is intention. And it is, who are you trying to please? So thank you for reminding us about that. Second question is, which of your personality traits has been the most useful? Not the best.
I guess I guess because I'm quite a strong person, that's quite useful, and I'm also very independent, so that helps me become quite resilient, I think, being quite strong. And then also when I travel, I think I'm quite sociable, and like I love to talk to people and hear their stories and connect, and I love learning about other people, and for some way I'm like really good at connecting with people, like just quickly. So I don't know.
Yeah. I think
Like,
that also comes out of a person, that energy that one radiates. So I feel it from you. I get it. Like I feel.
no, but even with you, like as soon as I'm so glad that we got to meet each other through this and that we
Yeah.
connected, and now I can call you Riada Abla as my sister.
Yes.
I
Yes.
was so honored to be able to
It's
have a friendship with you throughout this
yeah.
journey, and I hope that in the future we will stay in touch as well.
Of course we will. I mean, I have two younger sisters myself, so I'm used to being that grown up older sister, and I like that. So sometimes I like the idea of having my own abla or my own sister who's not my mom, and there are different mentors and different people. Of course, we can find that sort of necessity in, but as I said in the beginning, I'm sure, and I can't wait to all I want is to hug you,
Me too. Inshallah, we can meet in Bosnia like one day if I come back there. Or
what is this pandemic doing to us all? I miss my family so much.
I had to miss my friend's wedding as well.
Yeah, I miss being there. I miss everything, but sometimes you just gotta be grateful for health and for safety. There's so much going on in the world that's horrific and horrible, and sometimes it's troubling personally to me. And that's a topic of its own. It's really troubling, and I find comfort in talking to my husband often about it, and just trying to understand that we can only change so much from where we are, but we should use our talents and our skills to try to contribute towards what we care about from where we are. And
exactly.
And that's what we can do. So that leads us to next question, which is what skill or craft would you like to get better in or master?
I would even just say like Qur'an recitation, honestly, because
Oh,
I feel like I haven't mastered it at all. Like I'm honestly just at the beginning of my journey, and like right now I don't have like a teacher to teach me like the new things I'm trying to learn. So I'm trying to teach myself, and I'm just like, even when I learned about the Quran competition in Malaysia, like the most prestigious competition, they have like 4 different categories that they test you on, and I learned half of them. So I've got such a long way to go, and I'm just, yeah, I'd love to master that, and yeah, so that's something that I'll try to do, and just because I love it, and I think when you love something, you just want to learn how to do it better and always improve yourself, and there's always room for improvement. So yeah.
Of course. The more I know, how little I know. Remember?
Exactly. That's so true.
Scary
That's
and true, but it's true. So, are any of your friends completely opposite to you, or are most of them similar to you?
So a lot of my friends come from different walks of life, different backgrounds. There are different journeys in their life, but a lot of us have the same passion for human rights, and like we have a really strong sense for justice. And I think that's something we have quite in common. So, and I think a lot of us like to travel a lot, so we have that in common. And I think it's good to have friends that are like, as we were discussing before, it's good to talk to people from different countries, different ages, because you learn such different things from people's experiences. And as I said, everyone's on their own journey, so we all have something to learn from each other.
There's so much that we can learn, and the only thing that I think, the first thing that I think is the prerequisite is respect.
Exactly.
I really, I I always wish that we Muslims, especially, allowed more respect to each other, even despite our differences. That we just allowed each other to even practice our faith in different ways while we stay connected and united over the core. In my opinion, that should be the Quran, but then we go to the interpretation, etc. So let's allow discussions. Let's allow arguments based on what is within our, you know, within our holy book. Let's talk about context. Let's talk about history. Let's talk about present, and let's talk about future. And in this particular case, let's talk about inclusion. Let's talk about awareness of women's voices. Let's talk about representation. And let's allow women's access to the public sphere more than in many places and situations right now is the case. So that would be it for
Oh,
now.
I don't want this to end. Honestly, I genuinely don't want it to end. Like, I've had such a good time speaking with you.
Yeah,
It's so
I,
sad.
I think we should definitely get together again.
So,
We will definitely find more ways of, talking about this thing. And I'm very glad that we connected, and I'm so excited to keep following your work and sharing your work online with my own networks, and that this is going to stay in digital history. That's why I love about it. And it's going to be something that we will be able to look back next year, 5 years from now, and that we will be contemplating on what it meant then and where we are now. And all I want to say and remind is that this is not something that we're trying to steal from anybody. I'm talking about spiritual fulfillment. I'm talking about justice. And I will just end it right now by, saying to all of our listeners and viewers who are so patient in this longer episode, I hope you enjoyed it as much as Medina and I did. I will probably not cut many of it because I had a lot of fun, and I think we said a lot of beneficial things. So, you can fast forward if there's something you don't like. And I will kindly welcome, your comments, observations. Please feel free to review the podcast, write a note, write a critique. I will, respond to it with my best intention. If you come to me with the same best intention from your part, without always and never ad hominem personal attacks, this is never about that. In my dictionary, this is about dignified resilience. And so stay tuned for more conversations with people and guests from all over the world. And as I always finish my podcast episode, hold tight to those you love. Talk soon and have a nice day.